are just under 2.5 months away from the 2026 NFL Draft. So on today's show, we're going to take a look at some of the top draft targets for the Baltimore Ravens that have ended up on the Athletics' Dane Brugler's latest 2026 Draft Big Board. Before we go any further, though, make sure you are subscribed for off-season coverage, news, rumors, reports, free agencies happening in about a month. We got the draft happening and being covered right now, trade buzz, all that and more right here on the channel. Make sure you subscribe. 8 more subs to get to 49,300. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. When I look at the Baltimore Ravens 2026 NFL Draft, I see 10 selections, and I see 4 fifth-round picks. Obviously, you got some pretty decent selections this year with your first pick coming at 14, second pick at 45, third pick at 80. I love having 3 top 80 selections. However, when you do look at that 14th overall pick, don't get too excited about them sticking there. I would not be surprised if they move up or if they move down. Like, I see a reality where a player falls to 9 or 10 that the Baltimore Ravens cannot pass up and they want to go make a move to get him. But I could see a reality, which I think is probably the most likely, if they get to 14, there's no prospect that's necessarily blowing them away, or a prospect they do like, they feel like they could get him maybe 4 spots later, and they trade down. I could see a world where both of those things happen. Let's get into the big board from Dane Brugler. Number 1 overall is Arvell Reese, linebacker out of Ohio State. Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana. Jeremiyah Love, Caleb Downs, and Sonny Styles. Let's talk about your 3 Ohio State Buckeyes in that top 5, because you know they're not even going to think about getting Love or Mendoza. If Reese falls all the way down to like 8, I say you trade up for him, okay? Like, I really even don't care what you have to give up for that kid, because he is something special, ladies and gentlemen. The way he plays the game, the versatility he has in his position. He's like Kyle Hamilton, but for defensive linemen and linebackers, right? It's like Kyle Hamilton has the back 2 levels covered, and Arvell Reese has the front 2. Caleb Downs might be available, but I feel like safety's not necessarily a need. You went Malachi Starks in the first round last year, although I do believe that Caleb Downs is probably the most pro-ready player in this draft. Sonny Styles could be there. Intriguing player. Didn't miss a tackle this last year at Ohio State, but not the biggest need either, especially when you got some bigger holes to fill early on in this draft. Well, with Arvell Reese, man, you'd be getting a guy 69 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 23 pressures. This is why I'd be willing to trade up 6 spots for him if he falls all the way down to 8. However, I would be very, very shocked if that happens. Do any of these guys fall to Baltimore? Let me know by giving me a yes or no down below in the comment section and weigh in with your answer. Some guys that could be decently realistic in the 6 to 10 range. David Bailey, edge rusher out of Texas Tech. Mansoor Delane, cornerback out of LSU. Spencer Fano, offensive tackle out of Utah. Rueben Bain, edge out of Miami. And then Carnell Tate, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I've got 2 dream targets for where Baltimore is sitting right now. David Bailey and Rueben Bain are those guys, okay? I mean, I think these 2 dudes are going to be absolute studs, and I think their games translate instantly to the National Football League. With David Bailey, you have more of a pure edge rusher, right? 52 tackles last year, 19.5 tackles for loss, 14.5 sacks, 73 pressures. I mean, the dude took over games from the edge, and he'll be looking to do that in the National Football League. Both Rueben Bain Jr., I feel like this is a guy that might actually play a little bit more of interior defensive line. He's got pretty short arms, so that's something to definitely monitor. But what I love most about Rueben Bain is his motor, his aggression, the violence that he plays with. I think that would fit Jesse Minter seamlessly. Now, if Carnell Tate is a guy who's still available at 14, looked like Dane Brugler had him there at number 10, I'd be pretty bummed if that's the pick that Baltimore goes with. Like, I'd be a little surprised if they went wide receiver, but there's a couple of wide receivers we'll talk about in a little bit that I would be at least a little bit excited about. But if it's Carnell Tate, I kind of look at him as a guy who doesn't have a wide receiver 1 ceiling in the NFL. I believe he's going to be a really good guy, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 15 receiver in the league. And if you're picking someone in the top 14 of the draft, you kind of expect them to be that after a year or two. Something you can always expect and count on is our friends over at Ethos, the sponsor of today's show. And as you know, my wife, Kennedy, and I got married almost 2 years ago. I imagine we'll maybe buy a house, start having kids sometime soon. And if something were to happen to me, the last thing I want the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills. So I trust Ethos to keep them protected. After watching someone close to me go through loss, I saw how quickly grief can turn into financial stress. That experience changed how I think about protecting my family. Life insurance isn't about expecting the worst, but it's about making sure the people you love are supported, no matter what. That's why I recommend life insurance through Ethos. You can get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy. It's 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam, so you just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. Help protect your family with life insurance through Ethos. Get your instant free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily. Application times and rates may vary. Let's get into the 11 through 15 range, which is where the Baltimore Ravens will be picking Francis Mauigoa at number 11, offensive tackle out of Miami. Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State at 12. Vega, Ioane, offensive guard out of Penn State at 13. Makai Lemon at 14, wide receiver out of USC. And Keldric, Faulk, edge rusher out of Auburn. We've got a lot to discuss about these 5 targets. Let's start off with Vega Ioane. Right now, that feels like the favorite. That would be one of the selections I would actually be incredibly excited about. I think if I had to pick 3 guys right now, it'd be Ioane, Bain, and Bailey. Bain and Bailey we talked about a little bit earlier, but Ioane is a guy who I believe could step right in there and automatically be an impact day one starting guard for the Baltimore Ravens, which is what they need. Almost an 80 overall grade, 87.1 pass blocking grade, 0 sacks allowed, and 614 snaps for the Nittany Lions. And I think having a guy like Dwayne Ledford in there as your new offensive line coach, Vega Ioane could step right in and be even better as a rookie than he was as a senior in college. Now, for those wide receivers, Tyson, Lemon, I could be convinced. In fact, ESPN, I believe it was Field Yates and also Mel Kiper, had the Baltimore Ravens selecting each of those guys in a mock draft of their own. And while I don't think that's going to be the case, I think they go offensive line, defensive line. I think offensive line and defensive line are bigger needs for them. It'd be hard to pass up on those 2 talents. 2 guys that I actually believe are going to be better than Carnell Tate, who's the highest rated wide receiver in this draft. Like, I see Jordyn Tyson with that size being a wide receiver 1. I see Makai Lemon with that ability to run routes being a wide receiver 1 in this league. For Keldric Faulk, people would be mad about that. I wouldn't. I think people would see the statistics of this last season and how it was a little bit of a fall off from seasons he's had in the past, and that would scare a lot of people. 2 sacks as opposed to, 7 sacks the year before that. Look, I think what just ended up happening was the classic thing that happens is teams started double teaming him all season long. So obviously the production jumps down just a little bit, but man, he's got all the traits, he's got all the tools. He reminds me, play-wise, a lot of James Pierce Jr. Now, hopefully not attitude-wise, not character-wise, but like James Pierce Jr. did this exact same thing last year. His 2023 season was much better than his 2024 season. A lot of people got scared about that because of the, quote, drop down in production, but the Falcons ended up taking a chance on him. And he had 10.5 sacks as a rookie, okay? So I believe the same could be said for Keldric Faulk. To round out the top 20, we've got Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee, Caden Proctor out of Alabama, offensive tackle, Avieon Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher out of Miami, and tight end Kenyon Sadiq at number 20. I wouldn't mind Mesidor one bit. I think Mesidor is a really, really promising prospect as well. I think there's a lot to like about his game. I think he plays the position very similarly to Rueben Bain, and I think that those are two guys that were able to have success a lot at the collegiate level because of that motor, because of their size and strength. But the knock on Mesidor is he's just older. Right? I believe he's around 25 years old, so it's not like you'd be able to get a guy for a very, very long time until he hits his 30s, right? You get Mesidor after 5 seasons before the year 2031, this dude's already in his 30s. For Kenyon Sadiq, very interesting prospect right there at 20. I think he's going to be awesome. Tight end out of Oregon, really, really special player. If Baltimore doesn't want to re-sign Isaiah Likely or Charlie Kolar, or maybe they do want to re-sign Charlie Kolar, but they believe they need another tight end that has some playmaking ability, do they go Sadiq? I think it's worth a conversation. 21 through 25 is Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Casey Concepcion, wide receiver out of A&M. Dylan Thieneman, safety out of Oregon. Caleb Banks, defensive tackle out of Florida. And Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington. I think Casey Concepcion is one of those guys who is absolutely going to shoot up draft boards after the combine. I think the same might be able to be said about Banks as well, the defensive tackle out of Florida. I think picking any of those guys, though, at 14 is a little bit too early. Name the player you want the Ravens to draft in the first round, okay? Let me know down below in that comment section what you think. We'll round out this top 40 with our next 28 through 33. You will see Colton Hood, Cassius Howell, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, C.J. Allen, and Peter Woods. Now, I will tell you this. If you select Peter Woods or Cassius Howell, those are no's to me right now. And it's funny because Peter Woods has been falling down draft boards. In fact, like if we look at draft boards about a month ago, this guy was looked at as a top 15 player. Now he's all the way down in the 30s, and this is just kind of what I've been telling everybody about. Look, in the NFL draft, I'm much more about production than projection, although I argued kind of the opposite for Keldric Faulk, but still, Peter Woods, Cassius Howell, I'm going to X both of those guys out. R. Mason Thomas, TJ Parker, Chris Johnson, Zion Young, and D'Angelo Pons. Those are guys to look at as if they happen to fall down to you in the second round, you waste no time in selecting those cats. Who is your nightmare pick at 14? I think mine right now would be Peter Woods. It's hard to tell until the combine. Like, once the combine happens, we'll get a ton of combine warriors who just skyrocket up draft ranks, and then people think they should be top 15 picks because they can run fast in their underwear. So we'll be able to tell a little bit more then, but let me know who yours is right now. That's going to do it for today's show. Reminder, we'll be live later today, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you then. Make sure to subscribe to turn on those notifications so that way you don't miss it.